Hi. This is the first of a series I'm going to do on tenses, and we're going to be organizing our English during this 3-month session. And in order to do that, you need to have a good handle on the tenses. We'll learn other things as well, but I think this is probably one of the most important things I'm going to teach you. Now, before we go into the specific tenses, I want to tell you a little bit about English structure. You should at all times remember the basic structure of a question and a sentence, because nearly every sentence in English and nearly every question follow one of the formulas I'm going to show you. This is the formula for a sentence. The formula is a subject comes first, followed by a verb, and frequently followed by an object. Here's an example. The doctors is the subject, treat is the verb, and the patients is the object. Try to locate the subject, verb, and object in any sentence. The more you recognize the basic structure, the easier it will be for you to use it in your own English. Here's the formula for a question. First, look at the elements that are not in parentheses. The auxiliary determines tense in a question. The subject is the first word you're going to use when you answer the subject of a sentence. Here's an example. Remember that everything you say before the auxiliary is part of the question. So what is the question word? Time is the question word object. What time? Does is the auxiliary. The subject is this class, and that's how you're going to begin the answer, this class. And the verb is begin. But there is an exception to these formula, and it comes in the form of a question. Questions that begin with who, for example, who speaks English, do not follow the question formula, but it will follow the regular subject-verb formula. Who is the subject, speaks is the verb, and English is the object. It follows the same formula as I showed you the first time. It doesn't follow a question formula, it follows a sentence formula. But if who does follow the question rule when it is the object of the answer. Take a look at this. Now, in this particular question, who is not the subject of the answer? Who is the object? Because your subject is Peter. Who does Peter speak English to? The answer would be Peter speaks English to the residents. All right, so let's get into the tenses. When you learn a tense, you need to know 3 things about it in order to use it effectively in communication. You need to know when the tense is used, the auxiliaries associated with it, and the time markers that are frequently used with that tense. The present tense is used for habit and custom. Its auxiliaries are do for the first person and second person singular and plural, and does for third person singular. The time markers have the effect of limiting or controlling the habits and customs of the present tense. When you use words like usually, frequently, and rarely, you are controlling the limits of the tense. Here are some examples. I, you, we, they walk on the beach every day. Every day is a time marker. He, she, or it rarely walks on the beach. Rarely is a time marker. Typical questions: do you ever walk on the beach? When does he usually walk on the beach? If you notice, the questions follow the question formula that I told you about before. The present progressive is used for actions that are happening at the moment or are happening in and around the present. For example, I'm not exercising in the gymnasium now, but I am visiting the gymnasium a lot these days. When you use these days, it's like using the present tense for habit and custom, but more limited, like an action you started only last month and are still doing. The auxiliaries are the conjunctions of the present state of verb to be. Is for the third person singular, am for the first person singular, are for the second person and for everything else. We are, they are, etc. The time markers are now for actions that are happening in this moment, and these days for actions that are happening in your life within a limited time, as I explained before. Frequently, we use the progressive after an imperative. An imperative is like an order. Look, or stop. So, look, the waiter is coming is a typical example of using the progressive tense after an imperative. And here are some examples. I am learning English now. Now is a time marker. He, she, it is learning English these days. These days is a time marker. You, we, they are learning English. And some typical questions. Is he learning English these days? Are they learning English now? Why am I learning English? Okay, that's all for part 1, and part 2 we'll deal with the past tense and the past progressive.